How about now? What's it look like now?
You stop sharing. So.
Yeah, nothing.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So this week, like I said, it says that you're on the illusion of value. Rather, you're on value. I'd like you to kind of just peruse through some of the stuff that's up on value, but we've been talking about value all semester, you know, lights and darks, different ways of building up both color as value and, you know, black and white value. So I'm going to post a sketchbook exercise for all of you to work on. And I'll give you like 2 weeks to do that. And then this project will be due next week, just like we normally do. But I haven't been giving you many sketchbook assignments, so I'll give you a little extra time on that. It's really, I'll give you more information on it later, but really it's just in your sketchbooks, I want you to make like 1 by 1 inch squares, or 1.5 by 1.5 if you feel like working just a little bit bigger. And using a pencil, just try to make 20 different patterns with different values. So like one will feel really dark, one will feel really light, and just like kind of work through the way you can use different marks to make different values. But like I said, I'll share more on a little later. Okay, so we're moving on to the illusion of space. And the objectives this week are to understand how an artist renders the illusion of space by breaking down a 3-dimensional experience to a 2-dimensional plane, identify the different devices used to represent depth, to examine how the multiple types of perspective alter the view of a design's subject matter, to describe how open or closed forms work within the format of a design, and to describe how the devices of space and depth affect the viewer's experience of an image. Okay. So, ambiguity. I'm sure some of you have heard the word ambiguous before, if for no other reason than maybe the ambiguously gay duo. So ambiguity just means obscurity of motif or meaning. It's kind of a mystery or an enigma. Okay. Conceptual artwork. So conceptual artwork is artwork based on an idea. Most of the work that we've seen thus far has been, work that ends up being a painting or a design or maybe a sculpture, except for maybe the land works that we looked at for a bit. Land works and like Andy Goldsworthy, they kind of fall a little bit in the realm of conceptual artwork. So you've seen a little bit, but not a lot. But this was an art movement in which the idea is more important than the 2 or 3-dimensional artwork. And here's, how many of you have seen this piece before? Okay, so I can't hear anybody.
You showed it to us before in one of our, yeah.
So this is a Marcel Duchamp piece, and he basically was giving a huge middle finger to the art establishment, and was just like, it's art if I say it's art, and I'm putting it in this gallery, and now you're going to have to deal with it as art, but everybody knows that this is actually a urinal, but whatever, I'm going to sign it. Here you go.
You're in big trouble now.
Right? So basically all he's saying is the only thing that makes something art versus not art is where you put it and how you frame it, you know? So the concept was more important than the piece. This is a René Magritte. I'm not going to murder the French on you. It says this is not a pipe, which is to say that this is a representation of a pipe rather than an actual pipe. So if it were an actual pipe, you'd be able to smoke it. However, this is just a picture of one. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. This is a John Baldessari piece. So talking about intention in this piece, right? So a pencil that's like old and busted and looking funky on a dashboard, like is kind of just an object in space, right? It's not really serving a purpose per se. But when you sharpen something and prepare it for its use, then it becomes something different, right? So it has more purpose at that point. All right, so that's enough of conceptual artwork. Eye level. So eye level isn't really not meant to be a complicated term. It's just the level from which the viewer is partaking in the image. So like thinking about, like let's say you're standing across the street from a 4-story building in another 4-story building, you know, like just simply thinking about like, I'm looking at the building from the 1st floor lobby across the street. I'm up on the 2nd floor and looking at the building. I'm up on the 3rd floor and I'm looking at the building, and how that would change your view of that space, of that other building. Like obviously if you change your altitude, it becomes a different thing that you're seeing, right? Okay, amplified perspective. So you guys are all experts probably on amplified perspective because you've played video games a little bit, right? At least a couple of you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So first-person shooter games, you ever been creeping along and then all of a sudden you have a gun right in your face and the character behind the gun looks really small, but the muzzle of the gun looks huge? You ever experienced that?
Yep.
That's
Totally
amplified
not.
perspective. The objects warp because they're really, really close to you, and then everything behind it looks like it shrinks really, really fast. That's all it is. So kind of like this, that's what's happening. You've probably seen it more, like if you're an Instagram user, people love amplified perspective on Instagram. And their favorite thing to post on Instagram with amplified perspective? Dog pics. It works for cats too, but cats have shorter muzzles, so it's not as fun. Foreshortening. A distortion of a shape due to perspective, wherein an object appears shorter than you know it to be. That sounds kind of familiar after having just talked about amplified perspective, no? Kind of the same thing happening. But we usually think of foreshortening more when we're talking about like drawing like a person or something. So if you're drawing a figure and you're like looking down at the figure, you ever notice how like somebody's legs look really, really short, but their head looks huge?
Yeah.
Or like if somebody has their hand out to you and you try to draw that, like you have to draw their hand looking super huge, and then their arm ends up looking like some awful like ET looking arm. That's all because of foreshortening. We have gigantic feet. Those feet are far too gigantic to be real feet. Look at that head. It's big. Body's small. We don't even see the legs. Perfect. And there we have some really large Converses. Some really tiny legs. The person that's apparently been cut off at the middle. This one's a little messed up, actually, I think. I think that index finger needs to be bigger because the middle finger looks like it's bigger than the index finger, no?
Yeah.
For sure.
So I think that this drawing they should have made that index finger just a little bit bigger, and that would work. All right. So elevation shows one facade of the structure or the appearance from the outside from one viewpoint. So really pretty much what we think of as elevation. So I'm on the 1st floor. That's my elevation. Okay. So my elevation, I'm looking from below this Frank Lloyd Wright building up at it. My eye level is from below it. It's at a higher elevation than I am. It's also on a corner. We're going to start talking about everybody's favorite term, perspective. Linear perspective, a spatial system used in 2-dimensional artworks to create the illusion of space. It is based on the perception that if parallel lines are extended to the horizon line, they appear to converge and meet at the common point called the vanishing point. Now, this is the point where in like art classes kind of get boring in like the big art schools, and they make you just like do these drawings forever, and you draw the chairs from the corners. You ever done any of that? Jenna, you probably had a class or two where they just made you draw all the objects in the room or a box or something.
Yeah, I take drawing one and it's the
Yeah.
same.
It's like it's the boring class. No, not gonna hide that one. So anyway, the
It's not
vanishing
too bad.
is not too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I even did a like bubble one at one point. I don't know how to explain it, but it's cool.
Okay, so you had more fun with it than I did. Okay.
Problem is, it needs a lot of patience.
Maybe that's my
to be
issue.
right, right, and Hudson didn't like it.
Okay, so two terms that are necessary for drawing in perspective: horizon line. So the horizon line is like the farthest point we can see where the delineation between the sky and the ground becomes distinct. If you're having any trouble thinking about that, just think about looking across like some field or the ocean, and it's like literally the point where it looks like it ends. Like it's just the last thing that you can see. Now the vanishing point is a fake point, essentially. So if you're looking like down a hallway, let's say, to the very end where you can no longer see anymore, the vanishing point is the point at the very, very middle where that would be, where all the lines would converge in the hallway and come to the very end. If you're drawing something from like a corner, say, like let's say you're standing outside of a building and on the corner, and you're looking at the building's corner, the two sides will recede at different rates. So they like have two angles basically. But that imaginary point where the lines of the top of the building and the bottom of the building would converge often into space at the horizon line, that's your vanishing point. And so there's two. So 2-point perspective, two vanishing points. 1-point perspective is like if you're looking down a hall and there's one vanishing point. So we'll go into that in just a little bit more detail here. So here's a really simple looking example with a box. So this line, can you see my little cursor?
Yep.
Yep.
Hey, that's dope. That works out well. I should try that in actual class. Wait, this is actual class. So this is the vanishing. This is the vanishing point. This is the vanishing point, and they both reside on this horizon line, which is as far as we can possibly see. We're looking at a box which is below us, so we can see the top of it, right? If the box was, if we were looking up at the box, we would move the box up so that the top of it came over the horizon line, and we would no longer see the top of it. We would just see the sides, and they would come here basically. So there's all different types of perspective. There's 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, multi-point perspective, and multiple perspective. The 1-point and the 2-point perspectives are kind of, they make sense. So the 1-point perspective, just think like I'm driving down a straight road, and it's like at the very end of the road is the point that it goes to. 2-point perspective, like I'm staring at the corner of some building and it goes off, or like that box that we were just looking at. So multi-point perspective is a system of spatial illusion with different vanishing points for different sets of parallel lines. So I think I have the example later on in the, I know I have the example later on in the lecture. I don't know why I'm doubting myself. But there's a staircase, right? Think about a staircase. Like think about the staircase that you have to go up to get to class if we were actually still on campus. You know, you can see the other set of stairs as you're going up, right? And they're out of your periphery and you're looking up these stairs, and there's just a bajillion different parallel lines. Like every square makes another parallel line, right? So those are all going to recede to different spots. That's what it means by like multiple perspective. A multi-point perspective, rather. A multiple perspective is a depiction of an object that incorporates several points of view. So where do we know that type of thinking from? Anybody? Sounds like cubism, no? All right, we'll move on. It's cool. All right, so here's our 1 point perspective example. We're looking down the railroad tracks and our vanishing point's right in the middle. The interesting thing about 1 point perspective is if we're closer to the right side or the left side, it makes things change a little bit. So it would still be 1 point perspective, but if we moved over here, this angle would open up a little bit. So we have a better example of that on the next slide. So we're walking down this sidewalk on this side, right? And so this angle looks a lot more open. This angle seems to close up a bit. If we were to walk over to the middle, this one would close and this one would open, and they'd be the same, right? If we were to walk over to this side, this one would open way up and this one would close way down. And that's how it kind of works, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thanks, Paris.
Sorry, I'm making coffee while listening. So
No, that's cool. I appreciate that. Make some for me too, okay? Okay, so here's 1 point perspective again. We're equal sides here. We see we also see how the ceiling stuff works too. So we're it's looking like we're kind of in a mid height, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So we're halfway up the height of the room. So if I'm 5'10", then the room would be about 12 feet, right? Which is actually pretty accurate usually. It's usually about twice a person's height. In the nice apartments anyway. So here we have the 2 point perspective. So you see this a lot in cities. And again, right now we're looking right at this corner, right? We're standing right at the corner. Oh, that's how I move ahead. Thanks a lot. Jeez. Trying to figure out how to do that before. It wasn't working. So while we're standing right at this corner, these two angles are going to be equal, right? And so these lines will end up being equal. Versus here, this edge is shorter, but it also looks like we're canting over to this side a little bit versus over to this side a little bit. This one we end up with multiple points of perspective, right? These don't all go the same way. It looks like they should, but then we get into this shape here and this shape here, and things just start to move around a bit. This one is still in 2 point perspective. Hooray. Multi-point perspective. That looks like fun, huh? You all have to do 3 of those for next week. That's your homework. Nah, not what you're doing. I was just being a dick. How much do we love MC Escher?
He's my favorite MC. He's the dopest MC.
I think I prefer MC Ren, but anyway. All right. So here's a Gustav Keilbach with multi-point perspective. This looks like it could be out of Portland, doesn't it? Doesn't this look like it should be the Hay Building or something?
Right. Totally.
Definitely.
But anyway, you can see how you can totally make your images completely mathematical and convoluted. And sometimes I look at it, I'm like, but what's the point? And then somebody says, it's the vanishing point, you idiot. So multiple points. I don't know. They look neat, but at the same time, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, but it would look neat without it too. You could like not overcomplicate it, but it's good to know how to do. So you at least know why you're not doing it sometimes. Here's another multiple perspective. The boxes, man, it like gives me like Syracuse nightmares. This one's a little bit more fun. Tower of Babel. And you can see like how you're just how your angles sort of change a bunch. And here we have the cubist multiple perspective. Just for a review. Anybody remember who this one is?
I remember that piece. You showed it to us, and
It's actually a different one than the one I showed to you. You just did a bajillion of them that looked similar, but it's
wow.
George Brock. This guy, you know this guy?
That one.
Just guess an artist from the 20th century. I'm sure you'll probably get it right. Who is it?
Picasso.
Yay, you win.
I was gonna say Picasso for the first one, then you said George, and I went, okay, no.
Right, aerial perspective. So aerial perspective is, I mean, it's really similar to either 2-point perspective or 1-point perspective, depending on where in the air you're looking from. All you're really doing is using the same perspective rules, but from above. Okay, so that's a really convoluted definition that means you're looking at stuff from above. So here we see like a 2-point perspective, but we're above above the object. I mean like very far above the object. So it like we could be above the object and like a foot above here, and it would look very different. You know, it would be very much a 2-point perspective drawing still. But because we can see like more of the top than we can the sides, then it becomes an aerial perspective. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then this one's just like, yeah, this overblown aerial perspective. And honestly, like, I don't know, something about these drawings, they just always look wacky to me, man. I like mathematically, this is probably perfectly correct, but like, I just can't look at this door into this person's room without thinking that they live in like some sort of Harry Potter broom closet, you know? And a more complicated one. So I have a couple videos in this lecture. I'm not going to make you sit through them right now. They were like really helpful if you're feeling confused. They talk about where you need to be, like where you need to draw your lines and how the angles work if you're closer to one wall or the other wall. The one is a lady talking, and the other two are this dude talking this super British accent, and it's kind of fun, but like you can check them out if you want to. So I'll post those in a note for you, because I don't think you can actually get them from the slideshows if I post them. Okay, vertical location actually is poorly placed in this lecture because it has to do with elevation. So I should have put it back a little ways, and I meant to after last semester, but forgot. So here I am remembering again. So a spatial device in which elevation on the page or format indicates a recession into depth. The higher an object, the farther back it is assumed to be. So we know how this works. And this is what we use to like simplify in like cartoons and stuff. When like these drawings are really flat, right? So we just change the scale of the object and then move it up the page, and it still looks like they go back in space, right? But there's no difference in the line weight or anything like that. So there's nothing else that's really helping us out. It's really just dependent on where they're located on the page and their scale. This one, obviously it's a photograph, so we lose a little bit of focus in the back beyond it just receding and the angle closing up. The ties look really big in the lower portion. They start to become blurrier and smaller as we go up the page. Equivocal space. Equivocal space can be really, really fun, or it can really, really just confound some students. So just sit with it for a bit, and it'll probably make sense to you. But like, don't try to rush it. Like, just let this one happen to you when you're doing your homework. So equivocal space, an ambiguous space in which it is hard to distinguish the foreground from the background. Remind me again what the foreground and the background are.
Front is front and background is in back.
Yeah, or the figure in the ground. How is that different? The figure is whatever the painting is of, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we have these ship boats. They seem kind of ghost-like. It's difficult to tell maybe which ones are in front, which ones are behind, right? It gets a little confusing. So in equivocal space, we're really looking for that point where it's sort of ambiguous, like we're not as concerned with the objects getting smaller as we go back in space. They might be the same size, they might end up kind of being see-through, or they could be presented to you like this one. Do you all see?
Cool.
Yeah, you see her? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Little Red Riding Hood is in the wolf's mouth, but also is part of the wolf. And this one's even more fun. So we have the dog, and then we have the cat, and then we have the mouse tongue.
Mouse. Sweet.
And we have like an inversion. So if you think about like an inversion tactic, like, is it about the tree? Is it about the bird, the squirrel, the rabbit, and like the white, I don't know. Right now I'm looking at it, and the white makes it feel more like it's about tree, and then the like brown makes it feel like it's more about the positive space animals. But it flip flops for me, and if it's doing that flip flop thing, then you know that it's an equivocal piece. Okay, so another place you might have seen one of these is like, you ever seen the piece that's talking about symmetry, and you see a goblet, but then you look again and you see two faces that are like just silhouettes facing in?
Mm.
Yeah. So that's like the same idea. So if it like kind of flip flops for you, then you know that you have an equivocal piece. Okay. So closed form and open form. Closed form, the placement of objects by which a composition keeps the viewer's attention within the picture. So think this kind of form, right? So your eye will move around an object and within that object, but it will not go off of the picture plane, right? So this woman sits completely within this picture plane. None of her lines go off, like she doesn't continue anywhere. It's basically, this open and closed form are kind of like, if you want to think about it in terms of math, or geometry rather, like a line segment has 2 points that it ends, and we can talk about the line segment, right? But a line would continue forever, right? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So like an open form is like a line that continues forever. So the placement of elements in a composition so that they are cut off by the boundary of the design. So this looks like it could go on forever and ever, right? Cézanne's work almost always utilizes the open form. So this table looks like it could go back this way. The drapery looks like it goes off this way. And because he's playing with this space in that manner, it ends up feeling even more warped than maybe it is already. He's already like piecing together two different tables. You see that?
Mm.
And his horizon lines are flippant. So he ends up with, this is why he's kind of the precursor to Cubism, because he's already playing with seeing things from different points of view within an image before that movement ever happened. Here we have image that's receding right to this one point in the very, very middle. The form opens up, it's literally opening, and continues off. In fact, we don't even see all of these two characters. How odd of a crop is that? Hey lady, I'm gonna cut you off right in the middle of your shoulder. I'm sure that there was a painting to the right of that actually finished that figure. Isometric projection. I always forget this term when I'm not looking at it, but it's a spatial illusion that occurs when lines receding on diagonal remain parallel. So we've been talking so far about lines that will recede to a vanishing point. This is the opposite of that. They never recede to any point. They always stay the exact same amount of parallel. This is why when you're looking at those MC Escher drawings where the guy looks like he's walking up the stairs no matter which direction he's walking, that's why. Because there's no point for him to recede into. He just keeps going around and around and around. And you also will see this a lot in like woodcuts and Eastern artwork. This poor dude with his eyes being covered. It's a rough way to go. So here we see again, everything's parallel, it doesn't recede. Okay, montage. You guys are probably experts at montages, to be quite honest. A recombination of images from different sources to form a new picture. Woo, look at that. Anybody recognize this?
Illuminati confirmed.
Mm.
I've seen it before, but I don't know what it is.
It's the cover to Pearl Jam's No Code.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Nerds of the world unite. All right. Parallax, the resolution of two images from binocular, two-eyed vision. So all of these spatial devices are kind of dependent upon a parallax, right? Yes, I'm answering that. My own question. That's the answer is yes. So I haven't checked the assignment against the assignment on Blackboard, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have that one if it'll let me move over. Okay, so yeah, for the written portion, just tell me about the different types of space, what it felt like creating a piece in the different ways. Okay, how's the writing been feeling for you? Just doing it on the discussion board, is it better or worse?
Better.
The same.
Same.
Reminds me that I have to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, that's cool. We like that. All right. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I think I'll let you go. We're almost at noon anyway. And we'll talk about our rhythm pieces on Thursday. Actually, would it be cool to do like 10:30 to noon on Thursday so we have just a little bit more time to talk?
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be fine.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Usually that one takes just a little bit longer because people want to talk about the music that they posted too, and I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay. So I'll plan on seeing you guys 10:30 on Thursday morning, and I'll try to get some grading done for you so you know what's going on here
Let's do.
in the next night and a half or so. Sorry, it's been weird getting used to the different schedule, so I don't mean to put all of the work on your end. I know I have to do some stuff too, so I'll get you caught up. Okay. You want to say goodbye to my class, Adeline? No, we want lunch. So I'll chat with you guys at 10:30 on Thursday morning. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Peace out.
All right. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 We just came back from doing shop. My sister ran away from my sister. My sister ran away from my mom.
All right. Cool. Bye, guys.
Peace out.